Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rick Sterling, and thanks for attending my presentation this afternoon, Records and Information Management for a Small Organization. I think it's a pretty important topic, particularly if you come from a small organization. Sometimes we look at the skill sets and budgets and attempts at records and information management in much larger organizations and think that everything should be the same. And of course it's not. Working with less people to do the work, a much smaller budget, and some of the capabilities internally that may not be able to assist you the same way as a large organization would. Who's Western IM? We are Western Information Management in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. Most of you know us after all these years as Western IM. We work across Canada and around the world. We do projects such as strategic planning, classification development, retention schedule development. We do EDRMS work around implementation of Tier 1 solutions, long-term care and maintenance, and that kind of thing. Pretty much everything in the records and management space, except we don't store boxes. We also do records inventory in both paper and electronic information, and we build software tools that assist in completion of records and information management tasks. That's my day job. I'm the president of Western IM. In my ARMA side, I've been in most positions in ARMA International, including a member of the board of directors, the Educational Foundation, the Information Governance Professional Certification Board, and a whole lot of other committees. Also been president of ARMA Canada. And as most of you have, I've also done all the chapter things pretty much that can exist, as well as president. And the Saskatchewan chapter lets me continue on as the director at large on the Saskatchewan board. I hope you enjoy the presentation today and maybe pick up a few insights along the way. So what is smaller? To me, just as a marker in the sand, smaller is under 100 employees. So it means you have fewer management people. It means somebody in senior management needs to support you. Otherwise, you'll never get your records and information management job done. So you have fewer people to select for that support. Usually there's no internal legal department, so you can't count on the general counsel to help you push the records and information management program in compliance. IT probably consists of 2 or less people in the IT department, maybe even third-party IT support from some other organization. What that means really to me as an IT person is they're usually involved in that size of organization in break-fix only, meaning they don't do a lot of complex records and information management things. They basically deal with trying to keep the PCs running in the organization and help people with applications and make sure they're actually operating. So the complex stuff is a little kind of out of reach in a lot of cases for some of those IT groups. Security is often assigned to IT in small organizations, so they may wear several hats. It is important to them, I'm sure, but it's another hat to wear. The RIM person, that would be you, who was voluntold to do this job, is usually working off the corner of their desk. And because they generally had another job prior to that, they're just adding the RIM hat on top of the other one they currently wear. There's usually not a lot of budget. Even in larger organizations, the practitioners will share with you that the budget is always a tough thing to get for records and information management. But you do need one, so make sure you count on getting a budget as part of your records and information management project. Privacy. If you are public sector, you probably have to deal with privacy in your organization, and often that is handed over as a further hat to the records and information management person in smaller organizations. So if you haven't been handed that hat so far, just be aware that might happen and be prepared for it. When I hear the question, and I usually hear this question from a lot of people I talk to, is what should we really do? Because likely, as a practitioner, you may or may not have had a lot of experience in the records and information management space. And if you've been voluntold that this is the compliance thing you're going to be doing or taking charge of, then you are instantly going to want to try and ask some questions. So first thing is to try and analyze the organization and the corporate culture if you don't already know it really well. Ask the questions like, has there ever been an attempt at records and information management previously? Are you starting from scratch? Has somebody actually tried to run a records and information management program in the past, and maybe they retired and everything just stopped? So those are the things you want to know right up front as you get started. So remember what I said about you being voluntold to do the job? Well, here is kind of my outline of you in the organization you're in now, trying to deal with the records and information management job. My experience says you're smart and motivated to do a great job. You've been asked to do this, which means you're really appreciated corporately by senior management already. And there is a likelihood that you have management support because of that. So now let's take a look at what the next steps might be. So if you're not a practitioner already, first things first, where do I get some training? Not an easy thing to do in Canada. There's not a lot of records and information management training available all over the country. I would first go join ARM International, get budget from your organization and that allows you to join ARM International, and then find your closest local chapter and become a member right away and get involved. Also, ARM International has many, many resources on their website and in their bookstore that you can check out. The one that seems to be very popular is Essentials of RIM Certificate Program. I know it's $1,200 to $1,300 US, so it's not exactly a freebie by any means, but certainly very popular. Certifications are also great, like the CRA or CRM from the ARMAS ICRM, or the IGP, a little bit broader certification, a little deeper for sure. Contacts in like other sized organizations that do the same kinds of things you do. That would be wonderful. Third-party consultants are also an option, but again, that budget thing comes into play. So just make sure you have a budget, and if you need it, then use some to get your job done when required. Amongst this presentation, I'm going to give you some thoughts, RIM thoughts for the day. These are kind of from experience, so always good to know. First one is, if you don't know what you have, you can't manage it. So that means paper and electronic information. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I already said this once before, but it's a very important thing to ask first. Was there ever a records and information management program at your organization? And for how long? Many smaller organizations have attempted it maybe 2 or 3 times. And throughout those, things changed or stalled, or somebody left, or the initiative was taken away. You need to kind of know that up front. It'll help you in your endeavors. And the next thing we want to talk about is the classification system. So classification just means a structure, and we will look at that a little closer, but just a structure of where things go. Where are we going to put things? What buckets are we going to put them in? We also have to deal with retention, which is how long do we keep everything and what do we do with it in the end? Do we destroy it? Do we have to keep it forever? Do we store it? What do we do with it? And also, do we have any existing corporate policies? Now, many small organizations don't really have records and information management policies necessarily, but it's always a good thing to go have a look at. There's lots of it on the internet. You can pretty much go grab a whole bunch of different ones off the internet and start to look at possibly crafting some. You can also hire outside consultants to help with that task as well if you want to do that. But again, there's always a budgetary consideration in that regard. So back to fact finding. and this is on the paper side alone, is what kind of physical information does the organization currently have? Do you have boxes of paper? Do you have filing cabinets, closets, drawings in drawers, tapes, CDs? Lots of people talk about finding old boots in boxes too, so there's lots of physical things that you may find. And how much of it do you actually have, and where does it live, is something you need to know. Do we have offsite storage? There may be several different locations where there's offsite storage of that information as well. And start to think about what you're going to call those storage locations. Is it filing cabinet 1 through 12, or is it basement? You'll usually have to try and deal with that idea of where things actually live in the organization. And if you haven't inventoried it, or you don't have an inventory currently, you're going to want to try and deal with that. So now, here's the electronic side of things. Do you still have shared drives? And if you do, are they organized? Or are they still in some kind of chaos? I can tell you from experience that almost everybody will tell you their shared drives are still in chaos. So if they are in your organization, you're not alone. What do we have for electronic formats? Where do they live? How much is there? Have you any important corporate records generated at home? During COVID, people have had to put information somewhere. There was a certain amount of time, I'm thinking, that many people in many organizations didn't have access to the corporate network, so they created electronic information on home machines. Anyway, good question to ask. And you'll also want to find out what the organization actually uses, if anything, for records management now. Did they have an application already? Were they thinking of having one? Again, I didn't want to talk too much about the technology side, but you are going to have some kind of application to deal with things like content, storage, records management, that type of thing. Pretty complex component, though, without IT to actually help you do that, unless you come from an IT background in the first place. Okay, here's RIM thought number 2. RIM is not a fixed length project. What do I mean by that? It's something you have to do consistently over the extended period of time, virtually forever. You can't stop. So when you're talking to other folks in the organization about records and information management, because you will be, make sure you start to socialize that idea that this is not a short-term project, this is a long-term event. So here's some of the high-level things that you really need to do over time. Get a classification system. Now, I want to talk about that just a little bit. You may be able to find that one of your colleagues in another organization very close to you has a classification system. Your association might have a classification system already pre-built or pre-designed for your group. Just ask all the questions, talk to everybody you can, and if you can't find anything there, go out and look around on the internet. Lots of these things exist now. Retention schedule is another thing you're going to have, not just from CRA about keeping things for 7 years in terms of financial information. This is about all kinds of other things that need to be checked out through legislation and regulation to make sure that you know exactly how long things need to be kept and what to do with them in the end. Physical and electronic inventory need to be done. You need to clean up the shared drive if you haven't done that, or you're not going to do that. You should definitely do that. And help those around you to understand the concepts. Helping people in the organization is the greatest way in the world to getting your records and information management projects done. A couple of more thoughts about classification system. We did talk about that briefly just a minute ago. The couple of other thoughts are that if you do a physical records inventory, if you pay attention to the information you're finding and inventorying in the organization, that can go a long way to helping to structure a classification system. So if you actually get a full inventory done of the paper information in the organization, it can really help you in that regard. And of course, if you have a budget, you can go hire some folks to help you with that whole idea of building a classification system. The best way, though, of course, is to talk to your colleagues in other organizations that are like yours. Just a couple of more thoughts on the retention schedule. Actual disposition. is there may be an organizational retention schedule currently, but you really want to find out from someone how long it was ago that it was updated. So every few years, you really need to go back and check to see if anything's changed and actually update the retention schedule based on regulation and legislation that may have occurred. The other thing is that even though people decide to put a retention against inventory, meaning paper and electronic information, doesn't mean that they ever pull the trigger and dispose of that information. I mean, that is the goal, right? Is attach a retention to your information, and then that will allow you to dispose of it down the road. So if you maybe ask those questions and find out if you're going to be allowed to actually do disposition at some point once you've done your proper job on inventory. This is your room thought number 3. From experience, nobody in your organization really wants to do records and information management at all. Their old pair of shoes is probably very comfortable, and they really don't want to change a whole lot or do anything extra. So projects that you start need to be all about the users. The way around that always is to work in everybody's behalf and make sure it's good for all the users around you. That's the way to win in records and information management. So I just want to say this very quickly is I often hear from people that they want to put an EDRMS, that's an Enterprise Document Records Management System, into their organizations. I know that's about technology. I just want to make sure we cover that off. It's a very complex issue, and with small IT department that you probably have or a third-party IT department, unless you've got a very big budget, it may be not as the easiest thing in the world to deal with. So sometimes simple is good. If the shared drive's cleaned up and everybody knows where everything is on the shared drive, maybe that's all you need. Just because everybody thinks they should have an EDRMS system doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And again, not saying it's a bad idea, just be very careful because it is a very complex and costly issue. Rim thought 4, timing is everything, but it's usually wrong. Just an example. You've created a new classification system for your organization, or had it created, and you decide to put that in place on the shared drive. But you really can't do that because you can only do one department at a time. Nothing can be done that fast. So it could be a very long haul to try and get everybody using the new classification system. Timing is really a tricky thing in records and information management. We've talked about most of these things already. Really, the last bullet point on this slide is the most important. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on technology, but many organizations, small and large, have started to put cloud applications into their infrastructure. And it does create that whole complex kind of hybrid infrastructure does create issues potentially for records and information management. So pay attention, I guess, especially to what everybody's doing and whether they add new applications that are cloud-based on top of what they currently have now. Rim thought 5, from experience, never rock the boat too much if you can help it. With your corporate culture, they're not ready to move usually as fast as you'd like them to, and it may take some time. So here's the summary for today. Records and information management's never easy, and in a small organization, it's even harder than it is in large ones. So join ARMA, get involved, find others in the same position you're in, and talk to them. Make it a priority to find out what information your organization actually has at present, in both paper and electronic form, and where it lives. Take some classes, get a certification. Explore software tools that will assist in your mission. Pretty hard to do all of these things without a software tool to assist. And thanks very much for spending 20 minutes with me today. It's been a great conference, and my contact information is here on the slide. So feel free to email me or give me a call. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your conference.